Cole is the 18th episode of the first series, based on the story of the same name from the Railway series book Henry the Green Engine. It's a story that dives right into Henry's personality for the first time since the sad story of Henry, and we finally get to see what the cause of his illnesses were. One morning, Henry wakes up feeling very ill. He complains about it to James, who grumpily shrugs it off as Henry being lazy. The Fat Controller is also unhappy about this, given that this is the latest in a long line of problems with Henry, and not even new parts or paint seem to help. He warns Henry that if he does not get better soon, then he will have to be replaced, to the grief of him and his crew. Later, as Henry prepares to take his first train, the Fat Controller, determined to get to the bottom of Henry's problems, decides to ride along in the cab, having changed out of his usual suit and into a crewman's uniform. Henry does manage to start, but the fireman is not pleased and notes that Henry's firebox is not proceeding in adequate heat. As a result, Henry quickly loses steam and has to rest in a siding as he reaches Edward Station, leaving Edward to take care of the train. Henry's crew and the Fat Controller continue to investigate what the problem is. They discover that the coal provided is unsuitable for him, made worse by the low amount that they have been receiving lately. While the other engines have big fireboxes, Henry's is too small to make the amount of heat needed for him to run properly. However, if Henry had Welsh coal, he would easily improve. Although the Welsh coal will be expensive, the Fat Controller agrees that Henry deserves a fair chance and sends for James to collect some. When the coal arrives, the fireman carefully stokes up Henry's fire to give the best possible results. Henry initially has his doubts, but his mood changes when he comes into the platform with more than enough steam. The Fat Controller is happy to see that Henry is feeling well and warns the driver not to push him. The driver assures the Fat Controller not to worry, as Henry won't need pushing, but would have to be held back. Henry has a pleasant journey with his passenger train and, for the first time, makes it to the junction before Thomas. When Thomas arrives, Henry calls him lazy bones before quickly running off, paying Thomas back for insulting him before. Thomas, too surprised to be cross, reacts with disbelief, and Annie and Campbell agree with him. This episode takes an ongoing thing that was going on throughout the series and finally gives us a conclusion to it, that being Henry's illnesses. It was touched upon in Thomas's train and Thomas in the guard, showing that Henry could run properly but sometimes would fall ill, and nobody quite knew the reason why. And this episode finally solved that mystery. And I want to go over some little detail that's been brought up throughout the years for Henry's funny history. The whole story was based on an event that happened years ago when an unknown locomotive builder sent a spy in to steal some designs from Sir Nigel Gresley, famous locomotive designer who was responsible for great Pacifics including the A3s like Flying Scotsman and the A4s like Mallard. And he ended up stealing the designs for a prototype A1 Pacific, but neither the spy nor the unknown locomotive designer knew that this design was flawed, and they didn't realise until it was too late. And this story was so good that Wilbert Awdry decided to use it for Henry, giving us a reason for his illnesses. Because I've heard some rumours from various fans on the internet that Henry was initially a hated character from Wilbert Awdry and was planning to get rid of him throughout this Railway series. Part of it would have been due to the fact that Henry wasn't illustrated the way Wilbert Awdry wanted him to be. It's said that Wilbert initially intended Henry to be an Atlantic Pacific, but the illustrators for the Railway series kept giving him a shape that was similar to Gordon's. So Wilbert initially gave him shorter roles in the future stories, and with the intention of getting rid of him. But after fans said that they wanted to see more of Henry, Wilbert decided to write a story around it and show us why Henry has such health problems. And it was really nice to have a conclusion to this ongoing mystery for Henry. Because as I said, it was hinted at in previous episodes, but we never knew the cause of his illnesses. And this episode definitely doesn't disappoint with the answers. And I love how they carry on with the theme that everybody just thinks that Henry's just being lazy for his illnesses and is just making a big deal out of nothing. I especially love James's attitude towards it in the beginning of the episode.
I suffer dreadfully and no one cares. Rubbish, Henry, snorted James. You don't work hard enough.
And it's quite a joy and super hilarious to see Henry getting his own back at Thomas for previous episodes. And I haven't been bringing up any of the goofs in the series since we all know the goofs very well, but I feel this one's really worth bringing up. In a close-up scene of Henry after he gets his Welsh coal and starts running smoothly again, the close-up of him is actually him in his new shape, which was very weird since it would not be introduced until the next episode. In the episode Trouble in the Sheds did it as well, as Henry's puffing towards Edward to wheesh at him and then runs back after Percy wheeshes at him. When we see the shots of him puffing up, it's his new shape, but when we have a close-up of him when he jumps, it's his old shape. So it's very likely that they made the new shape and the old shape at the same time to save the budget. So I find it funny how they managed to mess up that one shot. But it's just a nitpick and it doesn't come close to ruining this episode. Plus, Hint Entertainment had done worse goofs when they re-released it and remastered it on DVD. Like that shot of Henry backing up into the siding and then pulling back out again when Edward's supposed to take charge of the train. It's just a really stupid one. I mean, Hint really couldn't have avoided making that mistake. But anyway, Cole was one of those episodes that I never got to see a lot of as a kid because I never owned it in VHS tapes. But years later I got to see it more and more thanks to the internet, and it's become one of my favourite episodes in the series. So if you haven't seen this one in a while, I recommend checking it out. In my opinion, it's a spectacular episode that gives us a great conclusion to Henry's illnesses, and you'll get a lot of pleasure watching it as I have.